Hey, welcome to Off Script. I'm Zach Lewis.
And I'm Dr. Draper.
Today on the show, we're taking a look at the new Netflix film Malcolm and Marie from Euphoria director Sam Levinson, starring John David Washington and Zendaya as two quarreling lovers in a very small house for like 2 hours. We're also going to take a look at Christopher Nolan's The Prestige, the 2006 film, because we watched Tenet earlier this year and it didn't really scratch the itch for us. So we thought, let's look back at something he's done previous. It's also a slow week at the movies. So we're going to talk about The Prestige. We both love that movie. It's going to be great. We need to talk about the Golden Globes. The nominees are out. They're pretty disappointing, but last year was a pretty disappointing year at the movies anyway, so it's fine. Before we get to all that, though, we need to talk about the news. Our first story, Mattel is developing a movie based on Uno, the card game, starring Lil Yachty as in the lead role. Somebody who I thought was pronounced Lil Yachty until Andy explained that I was not woke. Andy, what the hell is the Uno movie going to be about?
It's some sort of hip hop heist thing, again starring Lil Yachty, and I don't know how Uno plays into the. I mean, that's not the way I would have thought. That's the thing. You can literally make up anything about toy properties, but like, I would have expected some sort of like, I don't know, high stakes gambling or something like that. Like something since it's an actual card game. So I don't know like how this is turned into a heist film with a famous popular rapper. But that's the direction they're going in.
Yes, it looks like the movie may be set in Atlanta because Lil Yachty, our star, explained that. That's right. He explained that he was excited to be part of the film with Mattel. He played Uno as a kid and still does today. So spinning into a movie based on the Atlanta hip hop scene that he came out of is really special. Hits close to home. This is interesting casting, not because it's something new and original, but because I feel like we've had this influence of films that cast people that are not traditionally actors in the lead to try to draw, I don't know, eyes, I guess, get people in seats. I'm thinking of like Space Jam 2. Obviously following the predecessor of Space Jam 1, starring Michael Jordan alongside the Looney Tunes in a basketball career. Space Jam 2 stars LeBron James as like the Michael Jordan stand-in with the Looney Tunes doing basketball stuff. And like LeBron is not an actor, nor is Lil Yachty. So I don't know what it's about with like kids games and, starring people who don't act normally. But hey, anything could happen. Maybe it'll be cool, right?
Yeah, I mean, the Lego movie has shown that anything can happen. Because on the surface, you'd have told me before that those movies came out that this sounds terrible, but you never know. It'll be something exciting and fun.
Mattel's certainly into it. Uno joins other Mattel films that are currently in works, including those based on some brands you probably know. Barbie, American Girl, right? Maybe Thomas and Friends, Thomas the Tank Engine, but also some other things I haven't heard about movies for, including Hot Wheels, Major Matt Mason, Masters of the Universe, Viewmaster, Magic 8 Ball is getting a movie, and Wishbone, the dog. I don't know, man.
I don't know. See, Magic 8 Ball, that actually sounds intriguing. You could have some like mystical, like wish fulfillment, Faustian, monkey's paw thing going on.
Faustian, yeah, the Magic 8 Ball film. Maybe. These are all straight to streaming movies, 100%, as should the Uno movie be, but we'll see. Maybe it'll be cool when it comes out.
Mattel, feel free to contact me for more.
Yeah, big time. Slip us a resume, Mattel. We'll take a look at it on the air. Our next story, we're keeping it light this week because we need to talk about the Golden Globes award stuff. Always takes forever for us to get through, so we're going to move through it fast. Our next story, Disney is shutting down Blue Sky Studios, 450 employees to be impacted. I posted this story earlier today, so I don't know if Andy, you had the chance to read it. Do you know the down low on this?
I did, yeah. So Blue Sky, which is the studio behind Ice Age and Rio and a couple of other big franchises, is getting shut down by Disney. They were acquired in the 21st Century Fox acquisition, and it was a little up in the air what they were going to do. They didn't really know. Disney was kind of silent for a long time, but Disney's going to shut them down, in a large part because of the pandemic.
Yeah, it's definitely a bummer. This is really a bummer. Blue Sky has made films like, I think you just said this, but just to clarify, because I arguably wasn't listening. Blue Sky has made films like Ice Age, Rio, Ferdinand, the Peanuts movie, most recently Spies in Disguise. I'm not going to say they were direct competition with Disney, right? Disney does a whole lot. They have a lot of projects going on. But Blue Sky was certainly a contender. Blue Sky was up there with companies like DreamWorks. Making the Peanuts movie doesn't just go to nobody, right? Like you have to be a sizable studio to make that happen. They got the rights to it and they made it happen. And it was a decent movie. The Ice Age films are revered, right? Like there's a lot going on at Blue Sky Studios. It's really disappointing to see almost 500 people are getting laid off. I'm not actually looking at the story anymore. Excuse me. That's what I get not having my tabs correct.
They while they were mostly known for animation, before they kind of got into that, they also did a lot of special effects work. I was reading that they actually did the effects for Alien Resurrection, which I just actually watched the other day.
Oh, hey,
so yeah, they had done a lot of effects type work and were contracted to do that before kind of getting into animation and going full force in that. There's a bit of a location issue as well. They're located in, I think, Connecticut on the East Coast, and Disney has offered to try and find these employees jobs in other open roles, except all of those studios are in California and in and around LA, so it's gonna be rough.
Yeah, and it's worth mentioning, like, for anybody who thinks Blue Sky maybe didn't do all that much, like, Blue Sky put out Ice Age in a time where there weren't a whole lot of, like, really cartoony CGI animated films. Like, they were doing something different, and they, I think, directly influenced the direction Disney and DreamWorks have gone since. Like, the kind of cartoony look Disney animated films have CGI characters with big wide eyes, like Tangled, Frozen, like that stuff comes from work like Ice Age. Like, that stuff comes from work like Rio. So even if they weren't, like, directly a threat like DreamWorks is, like, it's a bummer. And, like, welcome to animating in 2021, right? Like, your job's never really that safe. They were in the middle of working on a new project that's been halted. It's a bummer, man. It's really a bummer. I think there's a lot of good people at that studio.
Yeah, there was I forget the name of it, but there was a film that needed about 10 months more production, slated to come out next January in 2022, and it just got cut completely, and probably won't be completed.
Absolute savagery. That's competition, right? Like, why try to beat your competition when you can buy their parent company and then just shut them down? It's a bummer. But those are the hot stories this week. Like I said, we'll be talking about the Golden Globe nominees in between our reviews. Without further ado, let's jump right into it. Andy, please take it away with review number 1.
Malcolm and Marie. So this is a new relationship drama that just came out on Netflix last week, directed by Sam Levinson. It stars John David Washington and Zendaya as this couple that's just come home from a film premiere. John David Washington is an up-and-coming director about just kind of on the cusp of fame. Zendaya is his significant other, and we learned that she, maybe could have had a career in acting, but it didn't really work out. So they come home very late. It's like, midnight, 1 a.m. She immediately starts making mac and cheese. And eventually they pick at each other and it turns into a fight. And we learn that she was not thanked when he was given like his award speech tonight. And that is the very tip of the iceberg, which unravels lots of issues in their relationship. They kind of go throughout the entire night. They fight. They kind of make up, they fight, find something else to find about, and that's kind of how the whole thing goes. It is just these two inside their fabulous Hollywood house. It is in black and white, glorious black and white as well. And it's a story about relationship. It's a story, as I think the tagline is, it's a story about love. It's not a love story, it's a story about love. So, Zach, what'd you think?
So I really liked the first half of this film. Like I said, it's just over 2 hours long, I think. And it is a long time to watch two people acting. I think there's a lot of meat to what they're doing. I think John David Washington and Zendaya really shine. Director Sam Levinson wrote this film in, I think, just over a week. The whole thing was shot in 14 days with a crew of about 22 people. It is all shot in one location. It features 2 actors and 2 actors only. It's shot in 35 millimeter black and white. For the film critics out there, there's a lot going on in this movie that works, but at the same time, it's a pandemic film. It's a bit of a rush job. It's a bit of a pet project. They shot this when they were in between episodes of Euphoria on HBO. If you watch that show, this is basically where that's coming from. It's kind of a spiritual, not successor, but companion from the people who make Euphoria. And in a lot of ways, it's sincere and it's heartfelt. And I think the first half of this movie, the first half of the arguing and the bickering, plays out like an argument that every good couple has had. Like when this movie starts and she's visibly mad at him and he doesn't get why, and they start to argue, it feels like every couple has had this fight. Like you feel like this is a fight you've had before. You're like, I get it, I understand the frustration. But about halfway through the film, it is you find out more about their characters and you start to get deeper into why they're fighting and who they are as people. You start to get disconnected from that. It's not so easy to connect yourselves with these characters. Suddenly they're their own people, and it ultimately ends up a little confusing and maybe a little bit more shallow than it should have been. I think there's a lot that works in Malcolm and Marie, so I'm excited to talk about it. I'm glad we watched it. But I think the best place to kind of jump into it is wherever you want to jump into it. So what's the best place to start tackling this feature, Andy?
Geez, there's a lot. Well, let's start with just the relationship, the story. This is a story about their relationship, and throughout the film, they'll, they pick at each other, or you can tell they're upset, and there's lots of hints, and eventually we kind of come up where someone says something that's really, kind of takes you back. Like they're fighting, and eventually she says, "You forgot to thank me tonight." And then that explodes the whole thing. Yeah. And then that happens kind of several times where there's a kind of a big relationship revelation, and you're like, oh my God. And it leads to a different thing. And they're quarreling the entire time. And you feel like they're going to break up several times. Right. But they don't. They kind of fight through it, work through it. But we slowly get more insight into each character. We learn that he's telling the story, or his movie is pretty strongly based on Zendaya's character and on Marie, and he kind of refuses to acknowledge that, and she has to kind of spell it out for him, like, no, this is based on me. I'm the reason you have this film, blah blah blah. And they kind of they're really mean and really like cruel to each other several times, and then they kind of work through it and come back, and it's I was really into it the whole time. I was surprised because I did not expect to really like this movie, but I was really along for the ride, and it really held my attention. I was surprised.
Yeah, it's got a really strong presentation. Before I jump into that though, and why visually it was so gripping, we should talk about kind of our proper story. Malcolm is a character who's very like aggressive. He knows what he wants, and he's not afraid of people thinking his opinion is incorrect. In fact, it's quite the opposite. He's aggressive when people say his opinion is incorrect. Like, how dare you question me, kind of person. Very, very self-aggrandizing, very proud. Marie is very much the opposite. She's very quiet. She's very back of the room. She's got a lot of problems, and she's self-conscious about them. They weigh her down. So the two of them have been together for a very long time. The two of them have been dating for a very long time, and they've kind of worked each other through these problems. Marie has a history of drug addiction. Malcolm helped her through that, and now he's become kind of a proper filmmaker. This is the evening of his premiere. When the film opened, he's over the moon excited. Oh my God, my movie's out. It was huge. She's like visibly pissed. And it's such a great place to start the film, right? Because it's like, okay, these two characters are on complete opposite ends of the mood spectrum here, but they have a history together. Let's jump into it. And it's a lot of fun. Like that first fight, I think, is fun because like Sam Levinson, now I'll talk about the presentation in a minute. I was very into how this movie looks. I'll talk about that in a second. The fight feels very real. Like I said, Sam Levinson wrote this in like a week and a half, and it's very visceral. Like it starts off very surface. Just these two people you don't know kind of fighting with each other, starting to get into it. She doesn't want to talk about it. We'll talk about it in the morning. He's like, I'm not going to bed angry. You got to tell me what's up. They start to get into it more. Like, it's good stuff. And like I said at the top, like it feels like a fight you've been in. Like if you have a partner you've been with for a while, or if you ever dated somebody for a while in the past, you've had this fight in some fashion where like one of you was angry and the other one didn't want to talk about it. And then you start getting into it and it just gets worse. You start pressing each other's buttons. And before you know it, you're shouting at each other. I kept waiting for him to throw hands in this movie. I was like, somebody's going to throw a glass at a wall or something. And like, You can watch the movie and find out for yourself if that happens.
There's a very aggressive eating of the macaroni and cheese as well. Like,
yeah, right.
When it's finally made, he's like arguing while he's trying to eat this bowl, and so he's like eating it very aggressively.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of alcohol use. They're drinking over the course of the evening. It's one very long night.
Well,
this is all happening.
Yeah, well, he is drinking. Like you see him, like he starts and then he just kind of always has a drink in his hand throughout the whole rest of the evening.
Well, they're both giving in,
which isn't helping.
Right, they're both giving in devices. She's smoking cigarettes, so like you kind of but you get this wonderful duality of these two characters who've been together for a very long time and understand each other very well. And as the film goes on, you kind of get to know them more and you kind of get to understand who they are. And I think in a way you can relate. My problem in the second half is that it just gets too complicated, right? What did you run into that at all? Am I crazy?
No, not too. I mean, I was with it the entire time. What I wanted to say is that, it didn't feel like a play to me, which is what I kind of thought it might. Like, we talked about what was it? Locked up, locked in, and
lockdown.
Yeah. Thank you. And One Night in Miami as well. That that movie is like pretty much takes place in a hotel room, and it feels like you're watching a stage play. And this did a really good job of not being that way. There were lots of really different shots. Like there's a lot of really interesting cinematography. There's shots of them. There's shots of other things in the room where, like, when she's making the mac and cheese and it's all focused on her hands. Like, so it's done very, very like cinematically. It feels like a movie as opposed to a play.
And you're right, because this 100% could be a play. This could easily be adapted into a play. It's two characters in one setting. They don't go anywhere. Like, this could very easily be a play. And it's almost all real time, right? The idea seems to be there's a few montages or jumps in time. For the most part, all plays takes place over one evening, over a few hours. And the movie is a couple hours. So like it could easily play as one long feature because that's how it's presented. This is one evening. For these two characters. We need to talk about the performances. There's only two, John David Washington and Zendaya. That's not a joke. It's not like somebody shows up at the end and breaks the ice. That's it. Andy, what'd you think of them?
I thought they were really great. I mean, like I said, it's two characters the entire time, and there aren't like action scenes or other things for them to do. It's literally just like a solid almost 2 hours of acting. So I thought it was pretty incredible. I'd be interested to see if these garner any kind of like acting nominations come Oscar season, which I think is actually starting next month, or announcements anyways. So yeah, I thought they were really phenomenal. And I mean, it's a lot. Like they both have like loads and loads of dialogue. And I mean, I was like, how did they, it's a lot to memorize and rehearse and go through.
Yeah, so it's a really dense script, and these arguments are very fast. Like, it's usually one of them almost like shout talking to the other one, or like very quietly saying like, paragraphs of dialogue, and they're both really tremendous. John David Washington is an aggressive character who gets what he wants and is determined to like get to the root of why Marie is upset with him and explain that he is not actually at fault, that maybe she's imagining this is something she's cooked up in her head because she's self-conscious and she has her own history with problems like this. Zendaya, on the other hand, is somebody who very much understands who Malcolm is and is explaining that like, you're not seeing me for who I really am. You're too caught up in your own nonsense to like really understand like the person I am and why I feel this way. You're not listening to me. Like, so you get two characters who feel very grounded in reality, right? Like their arguments are solid. And that's part of the reason it feels so relatable. The two of them are tremendous in this feature. I thought Zendaya, I'll be honest, was a little robotic at first. But as I watched the movie and kind of watched her open up, you realize she's cold at the beginning because her character is being cold to Malcolm. So it may be a little off-putting at first. She gets going 110%. John David Washington's the same way. Even when he's his most mad, he's still phenomenally enjoyable to watch. They're both delivering very long monologues, not only of like exposition of themselves, but of each other's characters, and often in one long take, which is where we need to talk about presentation. There are multiple segments of this film that are like 5 to 8 minutes long, where the camera doesn't cut once. And there's a scene in particular towards the end of the second act where John David Washington is delivering this monstrously long monologue about a film critic who's just written about his film. The LA Times review just went up from the premiere a few hours ago. And he's so mad about it. He rants for like 8 minutes of uninterrupted, like no cut footage of him like screaming about this review. And the energy is so crazy. And he just keeps going. And it's like, I love what he's doing. He definitely lost me at like 2 minutes though. And that's part of the problem. Like at some point I'm not listening to them arguing anymore. It's just words. And like I can't keep up, you know. And I struggle to stay plugged in that way. But that's nothing to do with the performances. They were tremendous.
Yeah, there's another shot actually right at the beginning of the film where it actually the camera kind of pans. The camera's outside of the house and it pans between Zendaya at the stove and then
John David Washington.
Yeah, sorry.
Doing laps around the living room.
Yeah, exactly. And the camera just keeps shifting between the two, but it's like a 10-minute scene. It's really long. Really incredible. Yeah. I will say that I have heard some criticisms that the performances are almost like too good. Like the dialogue is too, like people don't talk like that kind of thing. That didn't bother me. I thought it was all fine. I thought it was pretty organic, but that was one of the criticisms I read somewhere.
No, yeah, I didn't feel that way. Like I said, really my problems start to come in like the specific. Okay, here's a bit the affluence, right? These are two affluent people, and like it starts talking about how they're very human and normal, but you start to realize, oh, he is now a director who's going to be receiving acclaim, and she is not necessarily his arm candy, but his partner, right? Like who comes along for the ride for a lot of this, and his inspiration, his muse in a lot of ways. Like they start to talk about like art and like cinema in a way that you're just like, I don't know what you're talking about anymore. You're talking about authors and artists that like I've never heard of and influences of your character's life that don't make any sense to me because I'm not affluent like you are. Like that stuff starts to knock me off a little bit, but it doesn't come till later. And that's just me. Like Andy managed to keep up. Yeah.
I was gonna say it felt very like if you're a big, like this is perfect for us because we're big cinema fans and we know everything that he's like talking about and relating to it in a lot of ways, but like the average person might not.
No, not at all. Like it's definitely a thinking person's kind of movie, and I think that's what Sam Levinson does, right? So he's good at his work on Euphoria shows that, and his writing here. He wrote this in just over a couple of weeks. I think he had somebody helping him write it, but for most part, it was like written, directed, and shot in almost a month. I mean, it's so
shot over the summer.
Yeah, and they shot it because they couldn't shoot Euphoria, the HBO show. Like they needed something to do, and they were bored. So Sam Levinson was like, "Well, let's just do this thing." We should talk about the presentation. And any thoughts that way, Andy?
Well, like we said, the setting, it's all in one, big Hollywood house, but it's still it's one setting for all intents and purposes. It's in black and white, which I think is a really it's an interesting choice, and I think one that works really well. So I wonder what kind of inspired that. But I liked it. What about you?
Yeah, I was really impressed. The setting is definitely worth talking about. This house is really unique. They explain it's a rental. The studios put them up and they don't own it. I don't think that's a necessary detail, but whatever. Because they seem pretty at home in it, but it's like a museum. I mean, it's just super nice, trendy, like easy West Coast house, and they look very comfortable in it. It's a great setting for this feature, and it's a great open kind of concept setting for how Levinson shoots this film. He shoots it very intimately. Like we get a lot of long uninterrupted takes. We get a lot of really close shots. We get shots in the bathroom. We get shots in the living room, bedroom, outside, like all over the place. And it's creative. Like, yeah, you'd think it would just be shot almost like a stage play, right? Set up a couple cameras, kind of point them around, let them do the thing. No, that camera moves all over that house. It's down on the floor when one of them is laying down. It's next to the bathtub when Zendaya is like curled up and hugging her knees and crying. It's outside when John David Washington is going out to smoke. Like it really moves around a lot, and it helps the space feel a lot bigger than it is. It doesn't feel so claustrophobic. It feels like you're able to move and breathe. And the writing does a great job of allowing for that too. These arguments come in waves. They'll argue a bit and then they'll back off, and a little musical play, and one of them will get a drink or cigarette, and then they'll kind of come back together and they'll talk a little bit, and then maybe argue more, and then they'll back off. And one of them will say, well, hey, I just got to say this thing to you, and they'll deliver this monologue, and then they're just going to kind of quiet off. And like that pressure on the gas pedal just like occasionally really gives it a pace that makes it manageable, and it makes the points made at the end of each kind of argument state like more valid. Like when she really delivers something crushing and emotional to him, it really hurts. And when he really shouts something at her that like is just over the line, you feel that. And like that stuff I think works really effectively. But it's also like 2 hours of arguing, and that's like exhausting. I think I was beat by the end of this movie.
Yeah, it is a lot by the end.
It is 100% a lot. Any other thoughts, Andy? We covered the writing, presentation, acting.
Yeah, I just want to say it reminded me. It was like this year's Marriage Story.
Yeah, very much so. I could absolutely see the relation to that. And I don't know. I don't want to say I enjoyed this more than Marriage Story, but I mean, I have to commemorate what this film has done. Simply
I definitely did.
Yeah, from an experimental way. Like I did not think I would enjoy this as much as I did. I'm shocked I enjoyed it as much as I did. It lost me a little bit towards the end, but like it's genuinely stunning what they were able to do in so little time with so little resources.
Right.
Yeah. So, any other thoughts for recommendations?
I think I'm ready.
Andy, would you recommend Malcolm and Marie?
I would. It's a interesting relationship drama, great performances by Zendaya and John David Washington. Very minimalistic, all takes place in one house, very artistic. It's in black and white. And it also is completely nighttime the entire time. Which I was wondering how they shot this. They probably had to do it over several nights. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. It's tough. It does, cover some some tough subject matter from time to time, but yeah, I really enjoyed it, so I would definitely recommend.
I'm in the same boat. I'd recommend it as well. I know I harped on it being 2 hours and the second half being rough, but what I would encourage you to do if you're intimidated by Malcolm and Marie and you're not sure if you're going to be into it, pop it on, watch the first like 15 minutes, because I think it's about 14 minutes till you hit the title card. And that first like 14 minutes is like a brilliant microcosm of an introduction of what you're going to be getting into over the course of the film. I started this movie thinking this is going to be dry, this is going to be long, but I'm going to get into it and see what it's about. And by the time I hit the title card, I was like ready to text Andy like, "Oh my God, this is going to be super good." Like it really draws you in. So just give it a shot. Just try the first 20 minutes or so and see what you think. And if you're not completely plugged into what's happening in the movie, maybe pass on it, right? Try something else. But I would bet if you start Malcolm and Marie, you'll end up finishing it. That's my prediction. This movie is super cool. It's doing some stuff I haven't seen in a long time. I like it. A glowing recommendation from the off-script crew. So that's Malcolm and Marie. That's what's going on, I guess. Sam Levinson turned out a winner. Have you watched any of Euphoria, by the way, Andy?
No, I know that it's like a one of the HBO's big shows right now, but I don't really know what it's about or anything.
Yeah, big Zendaya vehicle. She's the main character. I know he directs a lot of it. I think he writes a bit of it. I've never watched it either, but I've heard glowing things from people around me. So if you have watched Euphoria, you have hot takes on Malcolm and Marie, write us in at offscriptfilmreview.com or comment on the Facebook post below where we're live streaming this, and we'll talk about it, I guess, because I'd like to know more. With that being said, we need to move on to our Golden Globe stuff. Andy, well, I'm switching over to our noms here so people can see what we're doing. For those of you watching the stream on Facebook Live, do you mind introducing the segment, please?
Yes, it's time for the death of cinema. So this week we're going to be talking about the Golden Globes, which are the kind of redheaded stepchild of the Oscars. Sometimes they get it right. They usually don't. A lot of odd choices in the nominations that they choose. Also, just the way that their awards are structured. They have they have best drama, but then also musical comedy, and what goes into those categories is sometimes a little bit strange. It's also only voted on by a very small, I think like 150 people, as opposed to the Oscars, which is like several thousand. So we're going to get started with Best Picture Drama, and some of these are not a surprise. Some of them are. So we have The Father, which I think I saw a trailer for. I have no idea what it's about. Mank, which we reviewed, Promising Young Woman, which we reviewed, Trial of the Chicago 7, and Nomadland, which we will be watching next week. That comes out on Amazon Prime. I'm really surprised at this list. There's a lot of streaming stuff on here, like we said, Mank and Trial of the Chicago 7. And also, I mean, Promising Young Woman, like we it has a lot of positive things, but we also I also think it's kind of a problematic movie. Zach, what do you think about these 5 for the drama?
So I'm excited to look at this list because 2020 was a weird year at the movies, and this is the first real example of like what is an award show going to be like for a year where we didn't have a whole lot coming out, and this is not too far off from what I kind of expected. This is a good list. It's not bad. I haven't seen The Father. The Father, for anybody who doesn't know, is about Anthony Hopkins as an older guy who is suffering from dementia. And over the course of the film, his daughter comes over to help him out and stuff, and he doesn't recognize her, and he thinks he does, but she might be a stranger. So he plays a character who like thinks there's something going on when like odds are there's nothing going on. Maybe there is. I haven't seen the film, but that's what that movie's about. Out of this list, we've seen Mank, Promising Young Woman, and Trial of Chicago 7. If I had to pick one of those, I'd say Mank because I love David Fincher. I like that movie a lot. I think Nomadland's going to get it. And I'll tell you why, because Nomadland just the other day won Best Picture at the Toronto International Film Festival, which is obviously before the Golden Globes, and usually is a pretty good barometer of where things are going to go here. I think this kind of small group of judges like to kind of look at that and go, well, they thought it was good, and maybe there's something I didn't see here, and they watch it. So that's where I think it's going to go. Nomadland, my sleeper's Mank.
I'm a little upset about what's not on this list. I think, well, number one, while Tenet, I think, should be on this list just because it was one of the only movies to actually come out in theaters. Like, none of these have actually had a theatrical run, so I think Tenet deserves some bravery. But also Sound of Metal, which was my number one film, is not on here. And also, so yeah, I'm disappointed in those two. Zach, any thoughts on those that are missing?
Now that you mention it, I had forgotten. You're right. Tenet should absolutely be on this list. It's surprising it isn't. I think it will make an Oscar Best Picture, but they also have 10 potential entries there and not just 5. I'm surprised Trial of Chicago 7's on here, frankly. I haven't seen The Father. Maybe that's like a far pick, but like that one.
The Trial of the Chicago 7. Yeah, that movie was okay.
Right.
There were some good things about it, but
yes, I think it's here because it's written by Aaron Sorkin, who is an acclaimed screenwriter and is also nominated this year for screenwriting, and it has like an all-star cast. Yeah, that's the reason I think it's here. Fundamentally, I don't think it's as good of a film as the rest of these, so that's my hot pick. Best Picture Musical Comedy, 5 nominees. We've got Borat subsequent movie film, Hamilton on Disney Plus. That's the film adaptation of the play. A film by Sia called Music that I've never heard of, starring Kate Hudson and Leslie Odom Jr. Don't know what that is. Palm Springs, the Hulu comedy starring Andy Samberg and Christina Milioti, and Prom, the Netflix film, which is, I think, an adaptation of a play, right? Like as I was told.
Yeah, it's a Broadway show.
So we've got 2 plays. We have, well, I don't know what Music is by Sia, but 2 plays, 2 straight to streaming films, and 1 that I've never heard of. What do you think, Andy?
This is, I think this is just a terrible category overall. And like they sometimes like Promising Young Woman which is a very serious film about sexual assault.
Yes.
Was in the musical comedy category initially, and then people were like, "What are you doing?" And they finally moved it out. So first of all, Hamilton isn't really a movie, so I don't even think that should be on here.
Whoa, hold on. Go ahead. I'll address that in a second.
Okay. Borat was fine. I think the fact that we don't even know what this, I've never heard of this film by Sia.
Yeah.
Like, how is that even on here? Palm Springs, I really enjoyed. But like I said, this is a weird category, and we didn't watch The Prom. So go ahead.
Yeah, so Borat is like a live prank movie. That's like putting one of the Jackass films on here, which are fine as their own thing, but like it just kind of stands apart, and I don't think it's as cinematic as maybe the Globes are looking for. Maybe it'll win, like there
were funnier films.
Dark Horse winner, yeah, but it's certainly not as good as the first film. I'm kind of in the same boat on Hamilton. I know Hamilton's great, but you just filmed the stage play, and you're like, Best Picture. Come on. That's not Best Picture. Like, look at Lin-Manuel Miranda's In the Heights, right? Like, the film hasn't come out yet, but he took a Broadway play that he made and completely adapted it to a film. You have a setting in New York. We have multiple places. It's a movie, right? Like it's not just a filmed version of the stage play. It is a proper film. There's a bit of a difference. I don't mean to sound like Steven Spielberg here. I love Hamilton, but like Hamilton has got all the awards it needs to. Won a Tony for God's sake, right? Like Hamilton's good. We don't need to start giving out film awards to Hamilton unless they're going to adapt it into a proper film.
Yeah, and which is what I said. Like I didn't really enjoy like just watching the stage musical, but I think if they were to adapt it into a full-fledged proper film, I think I'd be all about that.
Right. Prom is likely a proper film adaptation, right? Yes, like that's exactly. Not just filming the Broadway play. That's a movie. So like I think Hamilton's here as an honorable mention, just like it was on my top 10 list. It's not going to make it. Palm Springs is my pick. I think Palm Springs will get it. I hope it does anyway.
Yeah, that would be my pick of this list.
Yeah. It seems to be the most original. Obviously, I've never seen music. How do we, dude, when two dudes that run a movie podcast don't know what your movie is, you got problems. Like maybe I don't know. Maybe I'm just looking at this the wrong way or something, but I don't know. You want to take the next one?
Yeah, let's quickly go through Best Actress Motion Picture Drama. We have Viola Davis for Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, Andra Day for The United States versus Billie Holiday, Vanessa Kirby, Pieces of a Woman, and Frances McDormand for Nomadland, and finally Carey Mulligan for Promising Young Woman. Of all these, I think Viola Davis, hands down. I actually haven't seen three of these, but of that group, I would say Viola Davis.
Yeah, Viola Davis and Carey Mulligan were both like completely transformative in these films. Viola Davis is Ma Rainey Black Bottom. She's unrecognizable. If I walk down the street with a picture of Viola Davis in Ma Rainey's Black Bottom and showed it to 100 people, I'll bet less than 10 would be able to identify who that actress is. I would bet less than 5 would be able to identify who it is. Like it's crazy how different she looks. She is a completely different person. And I think the best performances are ones where the actors and actresses can just transform into that, like, and really own the role. She does. I haven't seen the next 3 films, United States versus Billie Holiday, Pieces of a Woman, and Nomadland. I think Frances McDormand won at Toronto International Film Festival, so that might be an indicator of what's going to happen here. But Carey Mulligan is super good in Promising Young Woman. I would love to see her win. I don't know if she will, but it would be really something if she did, because she's tremendous in that movie. Very different. Mm-hmm. For Best Actor in a Motion Picture Drama, we've got Riz Ahmed for Sound of Metal, Andy's favorite film of last year. We've got Chadwick Boseman for Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, in what I thought was a supporting role, but I guess he's the primary actor in the film, so that makes sense. Anthony Hopkins in The Father, playing a father who's battling dementia. Gary Oldman in Mank as the titular Herman Mankiewicz, the screenwriter. And Tahar Rahim in The Mauritanian, which is a film about Guantanamo. And
Guantanamo Bay.
Yeah, he plays somebody who knows information, I think, about 9/11 or something like that. So suffering from torture. We've seen 3 of these films. Andy, what's your hot pick?
I think Chadwick Boseman will probably win for mostly because it will be a posthumous award. He is incredible in that film, and I think he definitely deserves it. My kind of runner up to that would be Riz Ahmed for Sound of Metal. I think Gary Oldman is kind of actually overdoing it in Mank. It's a lot. It's the trying for an Oscar performance. So I think there's more nuanced performances.
Yeah, I look at this list and I think I don't mean to be biased based on like how judges are going to vote, but if we know anything about award shows, they're primarily pretty biased based on how judges feel at the time. Riz Ahmed's young. Guy's got a career ahead of him, right? He's great in Sound of Metal, but it wasn't really a wide release. I don't know if he's going to scoop it. Chadwick Boseman is a posthumous reward. And also, he's tremendous in it. That's worth mentioning. He is very good in that movie. He refuses to soft pedal on the gas. He is great from start to finish, and I think he'll probably take it. Supposedly, Anthony Hopkins in The Father is real good. I remember reading some early reviews for that movie, and they said he was tremendous. I don't know what it's about, but I'd like to see it. Gary Oldman Mank's a little much. I agree. He kind of goes a little too hard at it. I don't think it really comes around. And Tahar Rahim, I don't know anything about him. So I've heard he's good in the movie, but for my money, I'd say Chadwick Boseman's our winner. I hope so anyway. I think he deserves it. I really do. So next up, what do we got here? Best Director?
Let's go ahead and jump to that. There's a ton of categories here. So we have Emerald Fennell for Promising Young Woman, David Fincher for Mank, Regina King for One Night in Miami, Aaron Sorkin, Trial of the Chicago 7, and Chloe Zhao for Nomadland. Again, Aaron Sorkin is on here because he's Aaron Sorkin. That movie's fine, but it's not like there are some really great performances, but it also has some issues as well. This is actually a pretty good list. I mean, David Fincher, you're a huge fan. Regina King's directorial debut. We still need to watch Nomadland. So this is pretty tough. Actually, I can't. No one really sticks.
They're all bad, right?
Yeah, they're all. Yeah.
Thanks, Andy.
I might go with David Fincher for Mank, I think, from this list.
I think Fincher's film Mank is grand in scale. Obviously, I mean, spoiler alert, I'm going for Fincher. He's my favorite director. But it is grand in scale, and it's worth mentioning. We'll talk about this when we get to screenplay. It is a film that was like 20-something years in the making. Like the screenplay was originally written by his father, Jack Fincher. It is a long-form film. It took a long time to get this movie made. It passed through multiple studios, which means whoever's judging the Golden Globes this year may have had a finger on the pulse of this thing from years back. They may know about Mank. It may just be the hot pick. It's also about Hollywood, and Hollywood loves movies about themselves. Mank might be the winner. Emerald Fennell for Promising Young Woman is really tremendous. I don't know if I would throw her a directing award, but certainly consider her for screenplay, which she is nominated for as well. The writing is really something else, and I did like the directing a lot, but I don't know. She's definitely a sleeper, though. Regina King, One Night in Miami, I'm going to say pass. She's very good. It's a good film, but I think she needs one or two more movies to kind of really get her own directorial style, really become an auteur and come into her own.
She needs a movie that's a movie, not a play.
Yes. Yeah, that's a problem with One Night in Miami. She's adapting a play and not really an original film. Aaron Sorkin, I'd throw him a screenplay credit, which he's getting. He's got a nom for screenplay. We'll talk about in a second. Not director. And Chloe Zhao from Nomadland, I haven't seen it. But again, it's doing pretty good so far in the awards show season. So my pick is Mank. Sleeper, dark horse, Emerald Fennell for Promising Young Woman. For best screenplay in a motion picture, our nominees are Emerald Fennell for Promising Young Woman, Jack Fincher for Mank, David Fincher's father, Aaron Sorkin for Trial of the Chicago 7, Christopher Hampton and Florian Zeller for The Father, the Anthony Hopkins film, and Chloe Zhao for Nomadland. A lot of familiar films on this list. Doesn't change too much. Aaron, who do you think's taking it?
I would, from what we've seen, I would again go with Jack Fincher for Mank.
I hope so. Like I said, I mean, it's posthumous award, right? Like Hollywood likes movies about themselves, and that seems pretty sweet, right? Like it looks good on paper. It's a sweet, heartfelt thing. Headlines read good. Jack Fincher wins it. His son directs the film. Like that's a good story. I would love it if he won. Again, I'm a Fincher fan. I think it might go to Aaron Sorkin though, because Aaron Sorkin is a really tremendous screenwriter. And even though Trial of Chicago 7 is not his best work, I think Hollywood likes the guy. So we'll see.
Well, he gave us You Can't Handle the Truth.
He did give us A Few Good Men. That's true. And The West Wing and a lot of other good stuff. Again, I'd love to see Emerald Fennell win it for Promising Young Woman. Although I wasn't a big fan of the film, like I think the script is really something worth looking at. We'll see. We'll see how uncomfortable Hollywood is with like the idea of Promising Young Woman as award season rolls out. How about Best Picture Animated?
So for that we have The Croods: A New Age, Disney Pixar's Onward, which came out about this time last year. That was one of the last films we saw before going into quarantine. Over the Moon, which is a Netflix film. Disney Pixar Soul. So there's actually both Pixar films nominated.
2 Pixar films, yeah.
And Wolfwalkers, which is I forget the studio that does those, but that's the kind of Celtic folk tale thing.
I can never remember the Secret of Kells they did.
Yeah.
And they did a bunch of good movies, yeah.
So this is good. I was going to say probably the animated stuff has been better than a lot of the kind of mainstream stuff that has come out. From this list, I would probably have to go with Soul from what I've seen.
Yeah, I think Soul's going to win. I would love to say like, well, no, Wolfwalkers is super good because I've heard it is. Wolfwalkers is also on Apple TV Plus, which I would bet a good bunch of these judges don't have. So just on the way you access it, I'd imagine a handful haven't seen it. And also, it's Disney. They traditionally win like the animated category. Like that's typically how it goes. And Soul, I think, is a much stronger film than Onward. So that's my pick.
That reminds me. Sorry, before we go on, Christopher Nolan is not mentioned in the Best Picture category, despite like again putting out pretty much the only blockbuster all year. All these films seem to be actually really pretty much on the small side.
Yeah, you make a good point. There is no Tenet at all in any of these. I don't think it got anything, right? Like 0 Golden Globe noms.
He's trying to save cinema, and this thinks he gets.
It's
Is there anything else that we want to cover?
I was going to look at Best Picture Foreign Language, but I've seen literally none of them. I've heard about 2 of them. I'd like to see a couple of them, but I haven't seen them. We've got Best Score, Best Song, and then we get into series.
I was going to mention that, Tenet is mentioned in Best Score, but that's the only place.
That's right. Yeah, look at this. Best Score. Isn't that cute, Mr. Nolan? Your movie got 1 nomination for Best Score.
And that's good old Ludwig Göransson.
Yeah.
Who also did a lot of the music on the season 2 of The Mandalorian.
Oh, really?
Yep.
I just started watching that the other night. It's pretty good so far. Yeah. First couple episodes, not bad. No, I don't think we need to mention anything else. Best score is, can I talk about best score? Let me do that one.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Yes. Best score for motion picture. The nominees are The Midnight Sky, the George Clooney film, Tenet by Ludwig Göransson, Christopher Nolan movie, News of the World, Tom Hanks film we talked about a couple weeks ago, Tom Hanks in a Western, Mank, the Gary Oldman feature on Netflix, and Soul, Disney Pixar film. What's interesting about this is 2 of these films are scored by the same people. Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross both scored Mank and Soul. They have recently, of most recent fame, they were the minds behind 9 Inch Nails, the band. But more recently, they've worked with Fincher on The Social Network and most of his films going forward.
I was going to say they've been doing.
They do all of his
film scoring for quite some time now.
Yeah, so to see the same artist nominated for 2 very different films is really compelling. I would love it if they won for Mank. They did a lot of really clever work on that movie with period films. They've constructed like long form orchestral soundtracks for it. It's not just like a couple minutes of like a little score here and like a ditty in the background of a scene. Like they have like 10 and 12-minute tracks that they laid down for that movie. They did a lot of work, and I think it's really tremendous. Soul will probably win it. I'd love it if Tenet did, though. Just get one Golden Globe for Tenet. You know what I mean?
One. Yeah. I from this, I mean, Tenet was definitely the favorite score that I've had all year. I've listened to it numerous times. Soul is also very good. That's the other standout. See, that's the other thing is like I can't remember the music from the rest of these at all. Like Midnight Sky, couldn't tell you. News of the World, couldn't tell you. Even Mank, I don't remember any of the music. Right. So those 2 are kind of stand out to me. Either one.
We'll see. Do you think there's no way Tenet gets snubbed come Oscar season, right?
No, a lot of that's what's interesting.
That's
what's interesting about a lot of these awards. Like a lot of things that are getting recognized in these awards, you will not see at the Oscars, and vice versa. Things that should probably get more recognition will get more recognition in when the Oscars come around. And just some info on that. So the Oscar deadline is the end of February. So that'll be the cutoff, and then they'll announce nominations, I guess, sometime in March, and then the awards are actually in late April.
You're traditionally not a Golden Globe guy, right? You watch the Oscars religiously. However, the Golden Globes you usually brush off as trash.
Yeah, I just watch at the end.
What do you think this year, coming off 2020? I mean, it's a weird year at the movies. What do you think of the awards?
I mean, I don't even know how they're going to do them. I'm not sure how they've done other awards ceremony. I know that they have. But the thing is, we're going to get probably 2 years of weird awards because the 2021 film year is shorter because of the award season being shorter. Yeah. And also we have the same issue that we had last year of not a lot of movies are going to come out.
No. So that's the Golden Globes, at least the ones we're willing to talk about. There are, of course, other categories that we would get to, but we've spent far too long on this already. We need to get to our second film. I'm going to be taking the summary on this, so excuse the clumsy introduction. We're doing my best to get everything in order on the background, behind the scenes, to get this thing on. Yeah, the thing I'm trying to do right now and talk through. Whatever. The movie is The Prestige. So, you know what? I'm just going to stop and figure this out. Hold on. So, can I explain why I'm not running trailers on the live stream for a second?
Yeah, go ahead.
Please. Okay, so we're not running trailers on the live stream anymore. We used to, and we're not because we started getting a whole lot of copyright violations. Like every week we get copyright violations for that movie or for movies, and it's ridiculous. And I'm tired of it. So I was like, you know what? Maybe we'll just start running running, putting posters up instead of trailers. And so that's what I'm trying to do this week. And I'm very bad at it, but I appreciate your patience. Let's jump into it. The Prestige. Gosh darn it. There it is. Nope. Hold on. Got it. All right. Full screen. We're ready to talk about The Prestige. So The Prestige is the story of two rival magicians in the early 1800s London. Directed by Christopher Nolan, came out in 2006 following Batman Begins and preceding The Dark Knight. It was a weird time in Nolan's career. He was officially in theaters. He was a big budget director at this point, a hotshot Hollywood guy, but he still wanted to write his own features. And The Prestige, I think, in a lot of ways, is his love letter to cinema and the illusion of storytelling. Our two warring magicians in early 1800s London are played brilliantly by Hugh Jackman as Robert Angier and Christian Bale as Alfred Borden. The film opens with the two of them being apprentices to a magician who's on the up and up. And of course, this is a time before television. This is a time likely before, I think they had radio at this point, but you don't really see it in this film. The only thing people had to do to be entertained was read the paper, read books, go to bars, and look at magic shows, right? Illusions. And so the two of them are passionate about what they do. Bale is a slightly more talented magician, and Jackman is much more of a showman. And the two of them are forced to face each other down after a tragic incident involving a trick. And they begin chasing each other's illusions to try to outdo one another and become the greatest magician in the world. Like I said at the top, the movie came out in 2006. It features some brilliant performances and some brilliant work by Nolan. I'm excited to talk about it. Andy, what did you think of The Prestige?
I absolutely love this film. This is one of my favorite Nolan films. And, you see him kind of mastering the craft before he was given like $200 million budgets, making a film on a smaller scale that just creating so much tension, atmosphere. It's about this obsession to beat each other, to be the greater, I keep wanting to say magician. This obsession, this idea of identity is a strong theme, and just some really impressive visuals. I think one of the things Nolan does is he tries to create things that you haven't ever seen on screen, and he does that even in here. We have, kind of one of the things that happens early on where someone, one of the water tanks has to be broken on stage and like floods everything. Like, it's such a brilliant scene, and and an intense moment, and he's really good at just creating things you haven't seen before and putting a lot of emotion behind it.
Yeah, I think coming off of Batman Begins, like, Nolan was starting to be seen in the public eye as like a really grand filmmaker, and he wanted to kind of honor that vision while also creating his own thing, right? Creating a work that's not based on what anybody else has done. Batman, of course, is a old comic book property, and Nolan traditionally has been very devoted to writing his own work, and that's exactly what this is. It's an original work.
Now, this is based on a novel.
God damn it, Andy. I was
sorry.
So
based on a novel by Christopher Priest.
I had my plot laid out. I was going to keep going. All right. The Prestige. Is it really based on a novel? Oh my God.
Yes.
I've been talking about this movie being an original work for like 14 years, Andy. Hard to believe this movie's 15 years old now. So to pivot off the writing, because that was a total flop. Dude, you totally derailed me. Take it away from me, Andy. Please.
Oh, okay.
Oh God. What happened to me?
So there's a lot going on in this film. There's a lot of, like I said, identity's a big theme, and there's lots of you don't really know who people are, and it's interesting because the film opens with Michael Caine doing
Michael Caine
explaining what kind of the Prestige is, and he explains the three parts of a trick, which is the pledge, where you kind of demonstrate.
Magician says something is going to happen.
Yeah.
They're going to make something disappear.
The turn, where he turns the ordinary into the extraordinary, and then the Prestige, where it's like you set everything back. And so he explains this kind of 3-part structure, which is also parallel for the film structure, but he kind of outlines what you're going to see and what you're going to be happening. And it's like, are you watching closely? Are you watching what's happened here, or are you distracted? And so this kind of outline of how magicians, not musicians, is also just layout for what you're going to see. There's lots of foreshadowing. Like, this is a movie that, like, it just gets better on every rewatch. You catch so much every time.
Yeah, one of the kind of the famous quote that headlined the poster and when it came out was I think it was Hollywood Review said like you're going to want to watch it again the second it's over, which is exactly how I felt the first time I saw this back in 2006 because you don't understand as you're watching it, especially the first time. The Prestige is basically pulling a magic trick on you.
Yeah.
It is pulling a trick on its viewers, and by the time you realize what's happening, you've been fooled this whole time and you were enraptured and you were engaged. And that's what's so brilliant about the film's script and its direction, its tone, and ultimately its presentation is that it's practicing the very message that it's preaching to you. And it's rare a movie can do that. It's rare a movie can be about magic and about the wonder of illusion while also presenting an illusion to
To you, yeah.
and you don't even really know it. And like Nolan managed to kind of tap into this lightning in a bottle approach, pun very much intended when it comes to some of the characters in the film, um, to create something truly unique that I don't think I've seen since. And it's weird because I've seen this movie probably over a dozen times. And when Andy said he wanted to watch it for the show, I thought, okay, yeah, we'll watch The Prestige again. That's fine. And we started it up. Christine hadn't seen it in a really long time. So we watched it last Friday. I was making dinner. She said, well, hey, why don't we pop on The Prestige? I said, yeah, it's over 2 hours. Throw it on. It's going to be a time investment. It's a time sink watching The Prestige. She starts it up. I already know the opening beats. It's fine. I know where it's going. I finished dinner. I sit down. I was like, okay, here we go. Settling for The Prestige. By the end of that 2 hours, I was glued to the screen once again. I'm so into what this movie's doing. Like, it's so masterful. Somebody once said of Edgar Wright, watching an Edgar Wright film, director of Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz, is like watching a talented card dealer do a series of card flourishes, right? That's exactly what this movie is like, except instead of watching a card dealer, you're watching a full-on magician pulling rabbits out of hats and sawing women in half and making people disappear and doing like incredible things on screen, all while having the charm of two brilliant actors who are genuinely, I mean, not quite at the peaks of their career, but arguably this is some of the best work they've ever done, going at each other to try to win the war of the creative mind. Like, genuinely intriguing from a director who's also doing that. Like, it's really an incredible movie. It really is.
Yeah, and one of the things that really intrigues me is this: we have really solid characters. Hugh Jackman plays Robert Angiers, who is stage name is also the Great Danton, and he's a man of wealth. He comes from a wealthy family, and he's dabbling in being a performer, being a magician. Meanwhile, Christian Bale plays Alfred Borden, who's very much the opposite. He's kind of a very lower class, blue collar type of person, but he's better at this. Like, he loves it more. His dedication to the craft is kind of a little bit more. And this rivalry between them is so nasty, and it escalates just terribly throughout the entire film, and it takes place over years and years. But I mean, they hate each other. They maim each other multiple times. They're trying to, undo each other. It's an incredible rivalry, and it's tragic, but it just shows this obsession with each other and with their craft.
Yeah, and this like constant pursuit of perfection that the two of them are chasing. I love that they're two very different people. They're not even, I mean, they're kind of friends at the beginning of the movie. You don't even really get to know them that way before you know it, they're rivals. After tragedy strikes, they absolutely have a reason to not get along with each other, but they start really Jackman, right? Hugh Jackman, Robert Angiers is kind of the main character of our film, fundamentally. And Christian Bale gets almost, if not more screen time, but really he's kind of who we're following, I'd say, through the bulk of it. He's kind of our through line through what we're doing. And Angier just cannot let go of chasing Borden. He has to know how his next big trick is done. He has to outdo him. Angier's a better showman. Borden's a better magician. Like, they're constantly trying to one up each other. And when Borden is saying, hey, I've moved on, like, you need to let this go, then Angier gets one over on him, and Borden says, well, now I've got to get one over on him. And they just go back and forth in this game of cat and mouse in front of the public stage where tragedy continues to happen. Bad things happen. People get shot. People get stabbed, like, over the course of this film. People drown over the course of this movie. All in the pursuit of this idea that one will come out on top. And it's this brilliant rivalry film that is dressed in this wonderful layer of set dressing and costuming and 1800s practical magic, because Nolan likes to do stuff practical on camera when he can. and brilliant performances. So let's talk a little bit about that. Let's talk about kind of our costuming and our sets for a moment, if we can, because it's beautiful. Do you have any thoughts that way?
Yeah, it's a period drama, like you said, takes place around 1899. Yeah, and we have authentic looking, Victorian England and sets. We also have Scarlett Johansson and Rebecca Hall are also in this movie. Scarlett Johansson is kind of the stage attendant, and Rebecca Hall is the wife of Alfred Borden. But they play very important roles in kind of go-betweens between these men, and like they help fuel the rivalry in a lot of ways. But it looks excellent. I mean, it transports you to the time.
Yeah, every setting in this movie has like peeling paint on the walls and looks like it's dirty and grimy, and everything looks like it's a building that's been there for a really long time, but it's just old and outdated. It's everything reflects this theme of like the incoming of the new, right? And that's a relevant theme in the film. Like we've got the introduction of Nikola Tesla and Thomas Edison introducing electricity, like, and science coming around the corner, right? Like ultimately these men's ambitions are fueled by an engineer's product. They have ingenieurs, as they call them in the film. They're engineers creating magical traps for them, and boxes that make doves disappear, and jacket suits that help you make cards show up, and all these kinds of like technological innovations are fueling the future. And the two of these men are in a way trapped in the past. They're trying to fool people. They're trying to show people that the world is a little bit more magical than it really is. And I think the settings and the costumings perfectly reflect that, because they hold up this idea of an old time, a young time, back when things were different and things were new. And as time goes on and as they get older and as the movie progresses, everything just starts to age away and everything starts to wither and peel. And it's a great visual representation of how anger and hate can really like peel away at who you are as a person. It's really, really cool stuff.
Right. It's a really interesting play on identity. Like we said, these are men performing as kind of other people, but they're also performing in real life in a lot of ways. Like we said, Angiers comes from a wealthy family, but is kind of hiding that because like he doesn't want to embarrass his family by being a lowly magician. And then Borden also has his own secrets that kind of get revealed throughout the movie. But it's kind of who is who, and who is playing who, and who is playing someone. Like the identity is a huge part of this movie, and it's just like I said, there's a big duality.
I do want to talk about the tricks in the film, right? Like I said, Nolan is very much a practical director. He's infamously known as a just shut up and shoot it director. He doesn't actually overthink a lot of his shots. He just kind of puts a camera in front of things and goes, okay, shoot it. Pretty easy. And when it comes to a lot of the tricks in the film, I think everything was done almost all practical. If they're going to make a dove disappear, they want Hugh Jackman to be able to actually do it. If Christian Bale is going to make a ball appear from nowhere and then make it disappear, Bale needed to learn how to do it. And I think a lot of the tricks, at least I remember reading back in the day, the two of them went to a lot of effort to really make stuff appear real on camera because they wanted it to feel legitimate. And it works. Every trick in the film is kind of cheated towards the camera, right? Like they're not actually trying to fool the audience that's staged and behind the camera. They're trying to fool you, the viewer. And that's part of what makes the film so effective. A lot of the tricks look legit, and you'll wonder how they did something. And that builds toward this larger theme of the film when you realize the wool has been pulled over your eyes kind of the whole time. It's really tremendous and great visual flair for a movie that otherwise could have been very dry. It gives it something to look at, when one of them's hosting a magic show, you're probably going to see something cool if you pay attention to their hands. You'll probably see them do something neat, and it gives everything this feeling of weight, of reality, that these tricks are the currency in which these men trade and deal their lives away. It's effective, and I really enjoy it.
Yeah, it's really phenomenal. The tricks are there's this whole thing about how getting your hands dirty. It's a line that's repeated several times, like you can't be afraid to get your hands dirty, and a lot of the tricks they do are really dangerous, but if you can pull them off, like they wow the audience. But there's a lot of risk but to the performers. They do the person trying to escape from the water tank. There's a magic or bullet catch, which they talk about, but there again, it's part of the obsession, part of the commitment to the craft of, like I said, several times, Michael Caine says, you can't be afraid to get your hands dirty in this business. And if you are, don't need to be on the stage.
Yeah, big time. And it's very true, especially when you kind of realize where the film is headed. I do want to talk about the structure. Nolan normally has his films a little out of order, right? You can look at something like Memento, one of his early works, and see, okay, he really likes to do things in and out of place. I think lately we know Nolan to more be a director who kind of tells his stories a little out of order. But for thematics, for theme's sake, it all kind of makes sense in the end, right? It wraps up nicely. The Prestige is a movie that you kind of tend to forget it's not all told in order. It opens at the end, and then it kind of tells itself backwards a little ways, then it jumps back and forth. And I think that can be confusing. I remember the first time watching this movie being like, I don't understand like where things are happening or what time this is taking place in relation to other scenes. As you watch it again and you kind of come around on it more, I think it makes more sense. And there's a couple reasons for this. One, to thematically kind of present the elements of the story in the best order possible to help you understand where things are headed. And two, to distract you from what's going on, like to kind of jumble you a little bit. It's a little like a magician saying, hey, look over here. Don't look at the man behind the curtain, Mm-hmm. It's effective and it works really well. And it's weird because when I think back on this movie, I forget that there are parts that are told out of order, but there are. But it all comes together as this kind of package that feels very wholesome. Didn't feel particularly confusing to me back then. It still doesn't now.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting. So I watched a couple of some analysis videos because this has been out for a while. So there's a couple, but there's actually some thematic things that show up in some of his later films. Or actually, this idea of identity is something that is a theme and throughout a lot of his filmography. But specifically, there's stuff in the Batman films that are actually references to this. It's really kind of amazing, which I won't spoil here, but I'll tell you afterwards.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say you're gonna have to tell me after the show. And with that being said, I think we should probably wrap up where we're headed with this. I don't know if we have much more to say. I feel like we're starting to talk in circles, but it is a tremendous film. Anything else you want to cover before recommendations, Andy?
I think I'm ready.
Andy, would you recommend The Prestige?
Absolutely. Definitely one of my favorite Nolan films. And it's him right before he hit his big success with The Dark Knight, and then all the big budget films he's had after that. So it's him with really honing the craft, really solid writing. He has a writing credit along with his brother, Jonathan Nolan, who's a phenomenal writer as well. Really great movie, great performances. Christian Bale, Hugh Jackman, ScarJo, Rebecca Hall, good performances. Michael Caine, of course. Highly
Andy Serkis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Highly recommend.
Yeah, same boat. This movie is available on Amazon Prime. Do not run to your Amazon Prime account and watch The Prestige if you have not seen it before. If you excuse me, I got overexcited. If you haven't seen this movie, I cannot recommend it enough to anybody, adult or kid, young or maybe not too young. It's PG-13. Young or 13 and up. It is super good. It is a super good movie. Yeah, great performances all around. I love the presentation. It is such a cool microcosm of work right before Nolan really popped, right before The Dark Knight came out. Suddenly he was like a household name. This was something bigger, and it's a great work. It's a fantastic Hugh Jackman film. It's a fantastic Christian Bale film. Really cool movie. Really love The Prestige. Glad we got a chance to watch it on the show.
Absolutely.
And with that about wraps our episode 132. My God. Andy, what are we watching next week?
We are watching Judas and the Black Messiah, which is the story of civil rights activist Fred Hampton, and who was essentially assassinated by the CIA and betrayed by someone in the organization. And that's coming out on HBO Max, and actually also in theaters, so you can catch it there as well if you want to get out. This is definitely something we're looking forward to. Daniel Kaluuya plays Fred Hampton, with Lakeith Stanfield kind of playing the guy that betrays him. This looks really good. I saw this trailer and I was like, man, that looks so good. And so I'm excited to see that this week. And then also Earwig and the Witch, which is also on HBO Max, which is Studio Ghibli's latest film. It's not too long, only 75 minutes, and it's their first kind of CGI film.
Yes, I definitely railroaded Andy into watching Earwig and the Witch this week. But one, I think Studio Ghibli plays great to millennials. So for those of you out there that are our age that want to watch stuff, boom, got you covered. And two, it's their first CGI animated film. by Goro Miyazaki, Miyazaki's son, who did Tales from Earthsea and Secret of Arrietty, I think he did. He's done a couple of off ones. He did not do Ponyo, I don't think. For those of you out there who think he did, that was a different Miyazaki. I don't know how many of these guys there are running around in that family, but apparently they're all popular. It looks okay. And it's short, too. It's less than feature length, so that'll be an easy one for us. Both on HBO Max. Very excited to watch both of them, especially Judas and the Black Messiah. But if you enjoyed listening to the show today, you can follow us on Facebook, where we live stream the show every single Tuesday. You can check us out on iTunes and Google Play and Spotify and iHeartMedia and anywhere else you get your podcasts. You can find us on YouTube. We're on Twitter. We're on Instagram. We're around, and you can message us there. You can check out our website, offscriptfilmreview.com, and you can email us at mail@offscriptfilmreview.com. If you want to get a hold of us, write us a message or comment on a video or just, chime in. We'll see if we can get your correspondence on the air. That reminds me, I just remembered, somebody dinged me on Twitter about LA Confidential and said we should watch it for the show. So we probably need to do that. I should have that guy's name. Have you ever seen it?
Yeah, it's excellent. I haven't seen it in a long time.
Next week. I haven't seen it. Yeah, I should write that on the timeline. But anyway, outline, excuse me. We're very organized for this show. So if you enjoyed what you heard today, you can like our stuff. You can comment to engage with us. The biggest thing you can do to help the show out, just subscribe. Just subscribe to Off Script Film Review on your favorite podcast or video device so you can get new episodes every single week, get notified when we go live. And you could rate and review too. That would also help a bunch if you have the means, but maybe I'll pester you more about that next week. I don't know. With that being said, thank you so much for listening to Off Script Film Review, the home of bold cinema. I'm Zach Lewis.
And I'm Dr. Draper.
Thanks for listening.